Evening everyone, thanks very much for joining me for my first ever Facebook Live. This is the launch, so I really appreciate everyone joining in. Before you all say anything, I know the writing's the wrong way around, that's because I'm a cameraman on my own. So basically, yes, I'm just checking that everything is running. I love technology. Yes, so everything should be up and running, so if you've got any problems just send me a message. I can see that there's one viewer, so fingers crossed it's all going well. If you do send me any messages, I will try and respond back to you as soon as we can whilst we go along. The whole idea of the Facebook Live legal surgery is really to give a different stance to the legal profession. Generally speaking, I know that it can be quite difficult to go and see a lawyer, and it can be very daunting to go into the offices. So I came up with this idea to try and give it a bit more support to people generally I know and people they know and so on, and to social media. So it gives everyone an opportunity to actually ask any questions they may have, and then hopefully I can give generic answers, all confidential. So you know, if you wanted to send me a private message and for me to relay details to help other people, I assure you it will be confidential. So the way it's going to work is twofold. So you can either send in questions as it's live, or you can send me messages beforehand. And the second thing is for information. So there may be questions raised that you hadn't thought about, but they would be significant and you may well want to know the information in your life, or it might be something you haven't considered anyway. So it's a twofold process. So after every Facebook Live, what I'm going to do is do a blog for other people so that it can be shared, and whatever else is you know, it can be circulated. So that's the whole idea around it. It's supposed to be more user friendly, more approachable, and hopefully it will give people information that they didn't really know about either before, or gave them confidence to ask without the worry of having to pay expensive legal fees. So just a bit of background about myself. Generally speaking, most people watching will know who I am, but I've got over 15 years experience in the legal profession. I've been qualified, this is my 10th post-qualifying year. So my specialists are residential conveyancing, such as sales, purchases, remortgages, lease extensions, equity release, anything relating to the general everyday sort of personal dealings with property. And the other thing I deal with is commercial aspects of conveyancing, which is such as purchase or lease of shops or offices, or commercial new builds, developments, that kind of thing. So that's really my background in terms of property work. So I work as a consultant for Setford's solicitors. So I'm self-employed, so I don't have to you know, go by what they do all the time. Good evening everyone who's commenting, by the way, thank you. But I'm covered by their mortgage lenders panels and things like that, so that's the reason I'm under the Setford's banner. But I also have my own company which deals with private client matters such as wills, powers of attorney and things like that. So I can pretty much cover any questions you've got in a generic fashion or otherwise, but this will just be a general, hopefully every 2 weeks. I'm going to vary the day, vary the time, so it makes it more accommodating to people, and then what's raised, as I say, will come out as a result in a blog. I've got quite an extensive knowledge of various areas of law, but if there's anything I don't know, I will find out and then either send it to you privately, or I will, as I say, do a general bit of information for everyone to read. I'm currently doing my masters this year, so fingers crossed I should hopefully know anything you ask. I haven't actually had any questions so far, which I didn't anticipate, bearing in mind this is the first one, people weren't sure how it was going to work, things like that. So by all means, over the next couple of weeks, send me any questions you might have and you find interesting. But in the absence of any questions, at this time of year people are looking to market their property, so I thought it might be beneficial to go through some of the steps, brief guidance on what you do when you're going to sell a property. So the first stage is the initial marketing of a property. At that stage, it can be beneficial to... Sorry, someone has a question. Yeah, so just to answer the question that's been raised, it's if you have cash to buy a property, how long approximately would it take? Now, it depends on the cooperation of all the parties. Generally speaking, an estate agent would tell you that it would take about 12 weeks all over. What I tend to tell people is we can go as fast as the nearest person in the chain and as quick as they're going. So I would estimate on a good wind 4 to 6 weeks to exchange and then 1 or 2 weeks to completion. So we would hope to have it tied up within 2 months, but it depends if it's freehold, leasehold and all of those kind of things. By all means, if any of the terminology I'm using you're not 100% sure of, please just write a note and I'll explain it. It's not anything to worry about. It's everyone needs to know different things, so I'm more than happy to just give an explanation. So going back and talking about the timescales, the initial marketing of a property, you don't have to instruct a lawyer straight away. It can be beneficial purely so you can start the paperwork, purely so you can get your sort of ducks in a line and get everything together, but it's not something you have to be concerned about. If anyone has any queries and they're looking to sell, then, as I say, by all means get in contact and I'll talk you through the process personally. It's not a problem. But the advantages of instructing someone at the start of the transaction, before you've got a buyer or a seller, is that you can go through all the paperwork, get everything in line, and then you've got everything ready to proceed. Realistically, it's the disadvantage of instructing someone straight away is if the sale or purchase doesn't proceed, you've then actually potentially incurred some costs, which you don't want to do. I personally don't charge costs until the matter proceeds, but other people do, so it's just something to be aware of. Once you've got a buyer, you've got the contracts. So on a sale, you issue the contracts. On a purchase, you will do your searches, get your mortgage valuation, things like that. On a sale, it's not uncommon for issues to be raised as it goes ahead. It's nothing to overly be concerned about. As an example, on a survey, it's very, very common that an issue like a boiler or the electrics or things like that are brought up. So if those do come up, if you're buying a property, don't worry too much. If you're selling a property, it's quite common, it's nothing to worry about. It would be beneficial potentially if you are selling a property to get the boiler serviced beforehand, just so you've got that already in line to prevent any potential issues. But it's not compulsory, so don't be forced to do anything you don't want to do. Once you then exchange contracts, that's the time where it becomes legally binding, and that is the specific date that is then set for completion. So once you're going to set a date, it's important that you can actually achieve that. So I probably wouldn't get any removals in place until you know you can definitely achieve that date. And then it's usually 1 or 2 weeks to completion, which is the day that all the money is transferred. Around that day you get the keys or hand over the keys or get your money. We did have another question whilst that was going on, and it suggested how often would you recommend updating a will. Now, there are significant stages in your life which you will need to update the will. For example, if you remarry or you get divorced, then your old will, especially if you remarry, you will need to get a new one done. And it's essential that you do that because marriage revokes any previous will, so that is a time that you would do it. Also, similarly, if you get a large inheritance or you get a large sum of money, you might want to change your will for tax planning purposes. And similarly, if you've left any beneficiaries who have died or you no longer want to pass them, you can do a codicil, which is a minor alteration of the will. It's also important when you're doing a will that you make sure that people are happy to be executors and things like that. So if they have a change of heart, then that might be another sort of time where you want to consider changing your will. We've just got another question here that I'm going to read. So there's another question about potential rights of ownership where a property is owned in a single name and they live with a partner. Now, generally speaking, for someone to have an interest in a property, they have to have done something financial towards the property, so or to increase the value or to sustain the property. So general contribution towards bills wouldn't really constitute that. However, if they were to contribute substantially, if you're going to get an extension done and they funded that, then there is a potential that they could have gained a right in the property. It's quite long-winded and they would certainly have to pursue the issue themselves rather than you doing it, so it's not something you need to worry about immediately. But if you are concerned, it's best to address the issues and have a specific agreement in place to say they have no claim over the property. It's the major concern for that is where they have contributed financially quite substantially, so that's when you would really need to consider that. But as a general ongoing, someone else living in the property, as long as they're not overly contributing a substantial amount more than would normally be expected, then it's not something you particularly need to be worried about. It's one of the issues that we raise with people who are even buying a property together where they put in different amounts. So if one party is contributing a larger deposit, we would suggest that you would do something called a declaration of trust, which would then give you different rights to the property. There is no harm in potentially pursuing that option if that individual would look to get an interest in the property in due course, even if it is in your sole name. So there's no more questions at the moment, but by all means I think this is just a sort of a trial run, and what we're going to do is have more questions coming along throughout the weeks. The times and things will change, and it will be very much a moving sort of goal as to what people want to know, how I'll be presenting it and everything else. But we have had quite a few viewers this evening, so one of you will be announced tomorrow to win this lovely coffee machine, just in case you didn't think it was real. And thanks very much for everyone joining me on this first one. I'm sorry if there are a few errors, it will be all sorted out as we go through. And just to remind everyone that I am doing an offer this month for anyone that does want a new will or to update their old one. There's a 25% discount in January if you phone or email or contact me and use the code JAN2019. So thanks very much again. If you've got any questions, send them across to me and we will do it next time in 2 weeks. Thanks very much.